Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly edition of The Wrap. I'm Laura Leslie, WRAL Capitol Bureau Chief.
And I'm Travis Fain, one of WRAL's state government reporters.
Yeah, and this is the Halloween broadcast. We should mention that the legislature went home this week, allegedly. Allegedly. They're coming back this week.
Would you say they ghosted?
Oh, no.
No, they would never do that.
I would just like to see them be long enough for there to actually be cobwebs.
Right. Let me miss you, please.
What's that old country song? How can I miss you if you won't go away?
If you won't go away, that's right.
Anyway, they did. They claim that they're going away, but they'll be back frequently. And it looks like the short session next year looks like tentatively scheduled for April 24th. So mark your calendars and make your vacation plans accordingly.
Yeah, with kind of like monthly skeleton check-in sessions where if we need to do this, if we need to do that, if one of the countless lawsuits that are coming and filed necessitate some sort of action, we'll do it.
Yep. Speaking of which, redistricting was done this week, and it passed on straight party lines. No surprise to anybody. It got a lot of pushback from Democrats who were insistent that, number one, it was too extreme a partisan gerrymander to be allowed. And apparently there is some gray area as to how much you can get away with before it's too much.
Yeah, which has always been kind of like, where do we set that line? And of course, the United States Supreme Court said we're not going to be in the business of setting that line. And then the state Supreme Court has said, something very similar. The new state Supreme Court, because obviously that precedent was reversed in the last year and a half or whatever it was, when we went from a Democratic-controlled state Supreme Court to a Republican-controlled state Supreme Court out of the November 2022 election. So I'm sure there will be lawsuits. I would not have high hopes for them, but we'll see. I think we're going to see a challenge of an allegation of racial gerrymander, which is still illegal. You can't do that. Again, though, how successful they can be, I don't know. You may know more about that. You've, I think, had more conversations.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm thinking about what's kind of been going on in the U.S. Supreme Court this year. And I mean, we had a couple of decisions out of the Southeast that related to the Voting Rights Act. And the court seemed to be upholding the ban on racial gerrymandering and requiring majority-minority districts in those cases. However, just a couple weeks ago, they heard a case out of South Carolina, which is also a case that has to do with taking black voters out of majority-black districts and putting them into districts that are largely Republican. And from all the reporting that I've seen, I wasn't there obviously, but the reporting seems to indicate that the justices were pretty skeptical of this argument that constitutes racial gerrymandering as opposed to partisan, which is kind of the argument I think Democrats here are going to try to make. So, I mean, I don't know what the odds are.
Yeah, and it's oddly enough very similar to the famous argument that David Lewis made, where he said, we drew the map to 10-2 because we didn't think we could do 11 to, I can't remember the exact quote.
It was 10-3 and 11-2. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not racial gerrymandering. We're partisan gerrymandering. And of course, then we had to take this kind of side quest where we decided whether or not partisan gerrymandering was allowed. And now that the courts say it is, kind of we're back to, this is not a racial gerrymander.
Well, yeah, but the Democrats say, what sense would it make for a court to say, oh, it's fine, you can just go ahead and do something that is this basically disadvantages this group of people, but just call it something different, and that'll be okay.
Yeah, right. We'll see how the suits go. Not entirely sure who's going to sue.
We're still waiting to hear.
Yeah, reading between the lines, Eric Holder's group, which is a Democratic redistricting group, you were pointing out that they put out a statement where they basically listed off all these places they were going to sue, didn't include North Carolina, but then said, oh, but we're going to continue to fight in North Carolina. So
whatever that means.
But
there's also Mark Elias, and there's other groups that could still get sue as well. And so on a press call yesterday, Democrats were saying very strongly, I mean, I left that press call with no doubt that there will be a lawsuit. I just don't know who.
Yeah, and I also wonder how much change we're talking about. Let's say a Democratic suit is successful. Are we talking a one-seat difference? Obviously, one seat in Congress, big deal. Everything has kind of a domino effect as you redraw one district, you have to redraw the one next to it. So,
yeah. And speaking of dominoes, we got people getting in and out of races. Mark Walker, when he saw the new 6th, decided to drop out of the governor's race and go ahead and run in that instead.
Yeah, and he said in his release, I believe he said, "Look, I'd have to acknowledge that there's not much of a path for me to become governor of North Carolina," which is another way of saying that he feels like Mark Robinson is running strong, the lieutenant governor. Although we've got another candidate. I think we mentioned maybe last week that Bill Graham, who is a lawyer who's done like asbestos, mesothelioma lawsuits, sued Smithfield, the hog farmer, or at least his law firm did. Very involved in the Camp Lejeune poison water lawsuits. His firm is. So he's in the race, putting like $5 million of his own money in. Dale Folwell, the state treasurer, is in the Republican race, putting $1 million of his own money in there. But Mark Walker just saying, nah, I'm gonna go back to Congress, which I think he would be probably the favorite in that district, the sixth district, a Republican-leaning district.
Right. Republican-leaning now for sure. That was Kathy Manning's old district. We have not heard yet whether she intends to run, but it seems unlikely that there's any path for her.
I can guess that General Assembly Republicans intended for her not to run based on the way they drew that district.
Yeah.
So we figure she's toast.
In the meantime, Jeff Jackson said he is going to be getting out of Congress and running for AG instead. And I think that's the only Democratic candidate we know of for AG, isn't it? Or are there more?
No, that's the only one I know of. So it'll be Jeff Jackson as the Democrat and Dan Bishop as the Republican. And two people who, Jeff Jackson, an incredible communicator, very popular with young people. He does all these TikTok videos, but is not the most popular person amongst Democratic colleagues at the General Assembly and other places. I continue to kind of be amazed where we're down to a Jeff Jackson versus Dan Bishop, and nobody else is willing to run against either of these powerhouses kind of situation in the Attorney General's race. But that's what it seems to be.
I don't know. It's early days yet. Filing doesn't start till the beginning of December. So
it's October 27th.
Yeah.
Today.
Granted.
Yep.
In the meantime, Lisa Graustein, who was drawn out of her district into a new district, will run for the new district, which looks like it might be pretty competitive. I was looking at 2020 numbers. This is the new Senate 13 in the southern half of Wake County. It looks like it might have gotten a little bit more blue between 2020 and 2022, which would kind of make sense with the demographic influx that we've seen. So we'll see. I think it could be a competitive race. Judge Scott Lasseter is going to be running for that as well. You might remember he's the gentleman who sued Speaker Moore over alienation of affection. Of course, that suit was settled. But Scott Lasseter, I think he ran for something else as well.
He's run before, and I can't remember, or he's announced before. I can't remember if he actually finished the race or if he dropped out for. He's on the Soil and Water Board here in Wake County. I would expect other Republican candidates in that 13th district. I haven't heard of any, but that doesn't
I would think, yeah.
Certainly I expect others, and maybe more have already said they're running. I don't know.
And lots of people announcing they're planning to run for their seats again. Murphy, Hudson, McHenry, Ross. They're all pretty much shoo-ins. I mean, those are all districts in which you almost might not bother to vote because it's already so preordained. But one that we have been waiting for, we still didn't get this week, but a little closer. Speaker Moore kind of hinting. We had asked him. The rumor's been forever that he's running for Congress, and he actually was going to a couple of years ago. And then Madison Cawthorn kind of big-footed it.
Yeah, scared him off.
Yeah. So, but this time it looks like that new, is it 14 down there? It's right over It's right over Kings Mountain.
Right. That sounds right. Yeah, I think it's 14. And he basically told reporters, "Oh, I'm considering it," which everyone knew. But I tell you what, if you want kind of like a master class in how to get the same story written 4 different times, have Jason Sain tell people you're not running for speaker again, and then confirm it, and then say, but you might run for re-election, and then say you're not running for re-election, and then say, yeah, I'm considering running for Congress, which y'all all knew because you've asked me about it 35 times over the last 3 weeks. Each one generating a headline.
Yeah,
So,
there we go. It's what that earned media, as we call that.
that's right.
In the meantime, we have learned via the AP that Destin Hall looks like he has cut a deal to be the next speaker. Apparently, there was some angst, I guess, within the House Republican caucus. They did not want to end up looking like the U.S. House Republican caucus, and basically immobilized for 3 weeks while they fought over leadership. So it sounds like, I know that John Bell was a serious contender for that, along with Destin Hall, and then also Jason Sain, but they worked it out. It's going to be Destin Hall, and then Bell is going to be the rules chair.
Yeah, and they held, I believe, a members-only caucus. Was it Wednesday night? Whatever day they were in Raleigh to approve the maps. Maybe that was Tuesday.
It was right after session Wednesday, actually. Yeah.
There you go. And the first I saw reporting on this was Lucille Sherman, so she got the scoop on this one. And obviously it's not a done deal. The caucus will still have to vote next year, and then of course the full House will vote. I would think Destin Hall is your next Speaker of the House. Representative Keith Kidwell, who is also running a Freedom Caucus guy, far right guy. Him notwithstanding, I don't know if he'll assent to this or if he'll kind of go down swinging. We'll see.
My guess is swinging, but that's just me. Also, okay, next week, I should say, we get our first of the legal fights over the bills that legislators passed this year that remove some of the governor's powers. And the first one up at bat is 512, which is the one that takes away the appointments to a bunch of boards and commissions and gives them either to lawmakers or to other members of the executive branch. And so it's about, I think you said it was about 5 pages of appointments.
Well, so there's 2 bills that are operable here. 512 is exactly what you said, of course, and it deals with the Utilities Commission, which sets electricity rates, big deal. Board of Transportation, which kind of does road priorities, big deal. Environmental Management Commission,
yep,
big deal, sets business rules that have to do with the environment. Public Health Commission, several other commissions. And then there's this other bill that they passed this week.
The appointments bill, right?
That has the actual names in it. So names for the Utilities Commission, Transportation. I think that's 761 is that bill. But the 5 pages is much broader than that. It's got a whole bunch of things that you don't care about and then all these things that you do care about. And so they're only operable if 512, the underlying change in the law of who makes the appointments, goes for it. And that's going to be before a 3-judge panel on Wednesday.
Yeah, and I believe that the folks who are suing to block it are asking for an injunction at this point. Well, of course, they want declarative relief, but it's not going to happen with a 3-judge panel. But I don't think so.
Look at you floating these big phrases.
What? No,
declarative relief.
Well, everybody wants that. When you walk in and they just say, "You're right, we're done."
That would be nice.
That'd be nice. That'd be great.
Can we vote for that?
Yeah, sure. Okay. In the meantime, other lawsuits coming. 747, and that's one that the Cooper administration, I think, is suing over.
That's I can't remember who sued on that one. The Cooper administration sued over 512. 747 is all the tweaks to mail-in ballots
right.
and stuff.
That was a bunch of voting rights groups. Sorry, not the Cooper folks.
I have not seen a date for that one yet. 749, the governor did sue over. That's the one that reworks the State Board of Election appointments. So another appointments bill, but a separate bill from the one that's in court on Wednesday. I haven't seen a date on that, but those will be rolling out pretty soon, I would think.
I would think, yeah. Technical corrections did not get done. The budget tech corrects, and that's a bill that usually does get done because as you can imagine, a budget is hundreds and hundreds of pages, and as try as they might to get everything right, there does tend to be mistakes in it somewhere.
Yeah, the House rolled one out. They pasted it into Senate Bill 508. I didn't see anything particularly shocking or interesting in it, but I wouldn't be surprised if I missed something. I did see $30 million, another $30 million in there for land purchases and road work at the Randolph County site. That's going to be the new big Toyota facility out there. So more money for that. But again, the Senate was like, nah, we're not doing that right now. So that will be maybe a short session issue, or it might be something where in one of these check-in sessions they do a technical corrections bill. And if that's what happens, as listeners probably know, watch out. Because once you start doing lawmaking, you don't necessarily stop.
Yeah.
And you certainly, if you're the state Senate, you certainly don't stop with just the House's version of this bill with all these millions of dollars moving around, little tiny tweaks. So keep an eye out for that one. Again, that's Senate Bill 508 is at least the House version of that one.
And then you covered an environmental justice executive order that was issued this week by Governor Roy Cooper.
Yeah, governor had people over the mansion. He and of course he's pretty squarely in lame duck territory now, whether he wants to admit it or not. But he's doing an executive order which only has weight while he's governor on environmental justice, which I think people know, but it's the it's the reality that we put bad stuff in areas where poor people live. If it's a landfill or a natural gas plant, guess where it's going to go. And that has not only an impact on the people right around there, but there are all these cumulative impacts. So one of the more interesting things that this executive order the governor signed will do is set up this study on those cumulative impacts. HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, are going to be heavily involved in that study. This thing's going to produce a mapping tool so that you'll see here's all the facilities that have permits from the Department of inequality, and here's potentially impacted, affordable housing neighborhoods, nursing homes will be on the map. And so you kind of see how close these things are to each other. He also elevated a commission that's been working on this at the Department of Environmental Quality. That commission will now kind of be housed in the governor's office. And he also is telling cabinet agencies to come up with several ideas about how to do this. And he's moving them toward and consider this in permits. When you decide whether or not to permit something, consider this. But they can't quite do that because that would require a change in the law. So he's kind of trying to bump up against where his authority is there. We'll see how it goes.
In the meantime, retirees, speaking of bumps, getting 4% one-time bonus this week. That was legislators' compromise after deciding once again not to give them a permanent cost of living adjustment, which they have not had in many, many, many years. And they'll be happy to tell you about it. Just call the Retired Employees Association. Yeah,
that's right. If I could real quickly jump back in on appointments, we talked about two bills, the one that changes the way the appointments are done, and then the actual appointments bill, that's 761, I think. There are a couple of interesting things in there. 7 new judges, special Superior Court judges, that eventually, that 3-judge panel we talked about, will eventually, the Chief Justice, Paul Newby, who is a Republican, can pull from those new legislatively appointed judges to fill those 3-judge panels.
To decide on whether legislation is, yes.
Right. So a legislatively appointed judge deciding whether the legislature did something unconstitutional or not. One of those judges, Clayton Somers, who, is that how I pronounce his name, or is it's Somers, former Chief of Staff to Speaker of the House, Tim Moore. He has been residing at a vice chancellorship, I believe, at UNC. 4 new Board of Elections members in this bill as well. All the Republicans, the Democrats are going to nominate theirs later. Board of Transportation members. And a guy named Kenneth Robert Davis, who is Robeson County Commission's in-house attorney. He is going on to a disciplinary board at the state bar. That same board sanctioned him in May of this year for not paying his taxes for like 8 years. He stipulated that, that happened. The Speaker of the House, Tim Moore, who made this appointment, indicated, well, we might revisit that one. He said, well, I knew there was something going on there. I don't think I knew all that. So your mileage may vary on that, but that's what's happening there. And I had a story about that. Kenneth Robert Davis is his name.
Andy also had a great story this week, and that was on the use of AI in advertising. And so, as you noted, it's almost certain that we're going to see that in 2024.
Yeah, not only is it almost certain that we're going to see AI in false political advertising, I am willing to bet significant money that someone listening to our voices right now will be the perpetrator of it.
Oh, my goodness.
Because that's the classy listenership that we have. If you're in that world, you don't need to hear this from us. It's coming. Deep fakes, the difficulty of distinguishing reality from falsity on television and online is going to continue to get become a bigger and bigger challenge.
In the meantime, you noted Jewish Insider had another piece on Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson.
Yeah, he quoted Hitler in a Facebook post back in 2014. Yet again, the lieutenant governor has managed by his past actions to join himself in a headline to Adolf Hitler. The post was this. It was like a quiz that the lieutenant governor put out there for his followers. History, who said it, number 1. So he did like 5 or 6, but this was number 1. Pride in one's own race, and that does not imply contempt for other races, is also a normal and healthy sentiment. So the lieutenant governor quoting Adolf Hitler and asking people who said it. This post, I went back and looked at it because, again, you can just search through his entire Facebook page, search the word Hitler, and see if you can find things. Only one response to the post. Was it Hitler? LOL, idiot. I don't know who the idiot was there, according to the commenter. But, yeah, just another kind of unnecessary cell phone.
Yeah. Next week is looking, well, they're supposed to have gone home, but of course we're going to be busy as it is anyway. Democrats are holding a press conference on Tuesday. They're going to be talking about how bad the session was. In case you didn't hear them talk about that for the last couple of weeks, you're going to get another chance to hear about it. And redistricting as well. Then on Wednesday, we got several things going on. There is 512 is going to be in court, like we were saying, in front of a 3-judge panel. We got that. And then we also got a press conference with Senator Julie Mayfield having to do with a North Carolina Supreme Court hearing on the removal of the Vance Monument in Asheville. And we've also got a House Oversight Committee, but there's no information yet posted about what the topic is. So maybe it's another one of these super secret investigations that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. And the only other thing I know of next week, State Board of Education has its biannual planning meetings. So I'm sure something will come out of that. Emily Walkenhorst, our education reporter, I'm sure, have her finger on that pulse.
Well, everybody have a safe and fun Halloween weekend. Happy trick or treat. May all your candies be the good kind, not the crappy kind.
Yeah, candy corn for everybody.
Oh, no. Oh, don't even start. Anyway, have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week here on The Wrap.